Hi, my name is Kelly Barner, and thank you for joining me for this week's Supplier Diversity Discussions interview excerpt. This week, I have something really interesting to share with you. This is a call that I learned so much on. I had the opportunity to speak with Philip DeVliegher. He is the Vice President of Supplier Diversity at Disability In, which you may know is the organization that manages the certifications for disabled person-owned businesses, or DOBEs. One of the things that I had the opportunity to ask him about, which I ask actually all of the organizations and also diverse-owned businesses about, is what can corporate supplier diversity programs do better? Now, the question that he and I really got into was around what we can do, not just in terms of inclusion, but around accessibility. So listen into this brief exchange between us, and then I'll come back on the other side to share with you what I thought really stood out.
Disability reaches really across every dimension of diversity. So you mentioned minority-owned, women-owned, LGBT-owned. Our DOBEs, our disabled-owned businesses, are part of those communities too.
Yes.
But one thing that I think is unique around our community is in the area of accessibility. Where it's so crucial for business owners with disabilities to be able to access tools and programs and companies and opportunities just like everyone else. And that's where we see still a barrier.
Okay.
Where companies aren't fully accessible in the tools that they use or the practices that they use. So that's one area I think that differentiates the disability community from the others that we can really work to improve upon.
So there's physical accessibility, right? Like literally being able to get into buildings, but then I also imagine there's, how does the display of procurement software work? The visual accessibility. Is it the majority of enterprise software is working towards being more accessible from that perspective? Is it a very small percentage that has started that journey? Where are we kind of on that, let's say, digital accessibility?
Of course, we are on that journey, and there's a lot of opportunity to be better in the digital accessibility space. Absolutely. And that's one thing that we do at Disability is to really help our corporate partners with the resources and the assistance that they need to become accessible to everyone. So lots of opportunity there. There are certainly companies that are leading in the digital accessibility space, but then there are many others that are kind of falling behind or falling short. Think about, over the past 2 years, how many virtual events and conferences have taken place. And just consider the fact that many of these platforms are not accessible to everybody. Yeah. So it's a real challenge, but it's also a real opportunity, especially for those entrepreneurs out there to develop a tool, right? To develop an event platform that's accessible to everyone. Yeah. So we have a lot of work to do in this space, and we look forward to partnering with corporations to move the needle around accessibility, but it's so important to get this right.
Now, it's interesting when you start to think about accessibility, and this is an oversimplification, but just to kind of go down through a list of senses, right? You could have accessibility, at least digitally speaking, around hearing, around visuals, around how you share your point of view. And Philip's right. The last couple of years, an awful lot of things have been online, which in some cases makes them more accessible if maybe traveling is an option or some type of special technology is required. But the fact of the matter is, in other cases, it may actually make these events and this content less accessible. Now, I think one of the most important things we can probably do around this, because we don't always have the option to change out enterprise technology in the short term to something that is more accessible for people with disabilities, is simply being aware. So for instance, I asked Philip near the end of the conversation, okay, we're getting ready to wrap up this time. How would you recommend we do something like that differently if we were being aware of the fact that people on the call might have disabilities? And his answer was actually simpler than I thought it would be. He said, well, for instance, during the conversation, we might say, oh, this is Kelly before speaking, or oh, this is Philip, I just have a question. And similarly, as we sign off, saying each of our names, thanking everybody for being there. Actually, it sounds an awful lot like good manners and good meeting courtesy. So I think the biggest thing is we look at this big umbrella of supplier diversity, and there's an awful lot of different things that are covered underneath that. Increasing our awareness increases everyone's accessibility to opportunity, and that's the goal. So thank you so much for listening in to this week's interview excerpt. Please keep an eye on my other content. We have a few more weeks in the Accelerator program. And of course, share your comments in the post below.